Hi everyone, my name is Steph. This is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. This video is actually a collaboration that I'm doing with my friends, and we were talking about, how do people find books to add to their TBR and like what's everyone's individual process. I do it a lot of different ways. I see things that people recommend either through YouTube, booktube content, or on Instagram as I'm scrolling, or I follow a lot of authors, so when they have new books coming out, that's typically how I hear about them. Before I got sick, I was, having all these plans of, doing screenshots and screen recordings of where and how I find things, but honestly, I don't have that level at the minute. So I'm going with one of my other ways that I find books, or I try new authors, and that is thinking about sort of the book events that I have coming up. So in September this year, later this year, October, might be October, I'm going to Rare, and it's coming back to Melbourne. It's one day this time, and there are stacks and stacks of authors coming who I have never read before. Quite a few of those authors I actually already own things on my Kindle or have grabbed through various places, or I'm able to get on Kindle Unlimited. So what I've done is I've turned one of my try a chapter videos into a try a chapter for new to me authors that I may potentially go and meet at Rare, because I have my short list of people that I'm going to see at Rare, like Nalini Singh and Evie Mitchell and Amy Aislinn and people like that who I have read their books, I love their books, and I'm going to go and see them. But these are new to me authors, so why not give them a shot? So I'm going to put a picture on the screen of the 10 books that I'm going to try. So all of these are new to me authors. There's Elouise Tynan, and she has a short story in the All I Want for Christmas collection. Amy Award, I have Honkers Under the Holly as an audiobook on my Libby account. Leslie McAdams has Undone, which is part of the Beano and Veritas series, which I'm reading as one of my series to read this year. So, that's a great way to kind of just start. There is Nice Catching You by Ryan Talor and Joshua Hardwood. Peter E. Fenton has Manhunt. A.K. Steele has Always Fraser. Ines Johnson has Her Vampire Prince. Jax Calder's Love Language. Sarah Honey or Lisa Henry has the amazing Alpha Tau Boyfriend Project. And I have Robin Knight's The Invention of Wings out on KU. No, not out on KU. It was in KU, but I'm going to be reading the first chapter on Amazon because I'm not paying for this book unless I really like the first chapter. So yeah, that's a true try a chapter moment there, because why not? All right, so we're going to go in the order that I have spoken about them. We're going to try the first chapter. I'm going to give you my thoughts. The difference with this video compared to some of my previous ones is I'm possibly not going to read a book at the end of it, because I think what we've all decided is that we will come back to read some of these books later on if they pique our interest, although I'm me, so I may end up reading something. We'll see how I go. Let's do this. Elouise Tynan has a short story in the All I Want for Christmas collection, which is all stories. They feature Chris Evans, and in this case, Minnow, the female main character in this particular short story or novella, is trying to get in. It's Christmas time, and she wants to meet Chris Evans. She's found out which hotel he's staying in, and she's somehow made it up to his floor, and there she's met by the head of Chris's security, Baxter, and it's obviously going to be a relationship between Minnow and Baxter, and it's a bit of an age gap, etc. So mostly it's just their first encounter, and he reminds her that she could just leave, or she could spend Christmas in prison, like for stalking. Which choice are you going to pick? It's interesting, the writing's really good. I enjoyed the banter between the characters, so I guess we shall see. All right, next on the list is Honkers Under the Holly, which I have as an audiobook, which is a novella in that series, but it's what I have. I'm not getting another one just for the sake of getting it. All right, so the first chapter of Honkers Under the Holly, which is a holiday novella in Amy Award's contemporary romance series that all feature pets of different kinds. Mac, who is our MMC, the first chapter's from his perspective. He is a sports agent. He's out meeting a client at kind of a beer festival, I think, and there he meets Sarah Jane. I should have written the names down. This is the problem with me in audio. They meet, and then this goose comes crashing through this festival, and it turns out that Sarah Jane has rescued said goose, who has the name Sir Honks-a-Lot, and she's rescued him from a catering company that was going to She just feels very strongly about saving this goose's life, but then is worried that she's going to lose her job because of the mess that the goose has made. And so Mac helps smooth things over with the festival coordinator, and then helps Sarah Jane take the goose home, where Sarah Jane's roommates are not all that very impressed either, but they end up spending the night talking and getting to know each other, and it's going really great until her roommates in the next morning, because the goose goes a little bit nuts again, gives her the ultimatum that, you know, either the goose goes or you do. You've got to make a choice. And so the chapter ends with Max saying, I think I've got a solution, which I'm assuming is going to be, you can move in with me, because we love a forced proximity situation, don't we? It was very cute and fluffy and sweet. So there's that. And it's only a 4-hour audiobook. All right. The next book that I'm going to read is Undone, or the next book I'm going to try the first chapter of is Undone by Leslie McAdam. So the first chapter of Undone by Leslie McAdams opens in Jason's perspective. This is a queer contemporary story, and Jason has a long-term friends with benefit relationship with a woman. And so we wake up, they've just had sex, and it's the middle of the day, and he's just telling her that he has a new roommate moving in, someone that his sister has recommended who works at the local bar, which is Vino and Veritas, which is the linchpin of this entire series, because it's a series with multiple authors, multiple characters, same universe kind of thing. I've talked about it a lot by this stage. I feel like I'm introducing it every time I talk about it. Jason's about to get a new roommate, and he realizes that he's running late to meet said new roommate. So he goes over there, he meets him. His name is Murph. Jason knows already that he's gay, and that when he meets him, he's just this kind of really adorable, very outgoing, friendly kind of guy. And that's kind of where it is. So this is obviously going to be a roommates to lovers story. I enjoyed the writing. I'll definitely come back to it because I'm reading this series anyway, but yeah, a good start to this particular book. All right, the next book we're going to read the first chapter of is Nice Catching You. All right, so the first chapter of Nice Catching You is from the perspective of Jacob, who is a college student. So this is a college hockey romance. He's just seen on the bus. They're obviously coming back from either going somewhere or from somewhere or whatever. Jacob is not a hockey player. Something happens to the bus. There's some kind of accident, and Jacob gets thrown out of his seat and is caught by Nick, who is one of the hockey players. It's just kind of that slightly awkward moment of being caught by someone, and Jacob realizing that Nick is very attractive, but also knowing that a lot of the athletic guys tend to tease him. And so he's not quite sure which way this is going to go. Nick is really nice. Nick's friend, not so much. Makes some very off-color comments about the whole situation. But the chapter ends with the driver going to check out the bus and make sure everything is fine. Yeah, an intriguing start. I don't think I've had a book start quite like this before. All right, next on the list is Manhunter by Peter E. Fenton. Manhunt is book 1 in the Declan Hunt mystery series, and I know that they're queer. I don't know if it's romantic suspense or just mystery. I'm assuming it's romantic suspense because the author is going to rare. The first chapter opens with a guy called Ian Hunt who is in some kind of financial difficulty and is kidnapped, locked in the boot of his own car, and then when he tries to flee, his attacker ends up, I'm assuming, being killed. So that's where chapter 1 ends off, and then chapter 2, which I've just had a very quick read of the first line, starts with Declan Hunt, who I'm assuming is either a son or a relative of some description, and that's where the story's going to go. I like these kind of stories, I always have. So next up, I'm going to read the first chapter of Always Fraser by A.K. Steele. So Always Fraser opened up with a prologue that was as long as a chapter. Prologues should never be as long as a chapter if you're going to have a prologue. It's just a chapter. We have Elena, who works for some kind of reality renovation show, and she's very underappreciated by her boss, and to the point where she knows she's going to have a really late night. She calls her fiance, says, I'm going to be late. I don't know what time I'm going to get home, which straight away, red flag, we know what's happening with the fiance. And then basically her boss is completely unreasonable, and she ends up going there and she quits. And then she goes home, she finds her fiance cheating on her, loses it, and ends up, going, I've got no job, no friends, no partner, blah, blah, blah. I know that that's not the bulk of the story. I just don't know if I can deal with this particular book. So this one's probably not going to be something that I continue. Next up is Her Vampire Prince by Ines Johnson. All right, chapter 1 was fairly short. It is from the perspective of Hadrian, who is a vampire, and he's on some kind of battlefield and is taken down by the sun. I don't know much more. I'd probably need to read a couple more chapters to decide whether or not I want to continue this. My gut instinct says no, but it was like 4 Kindle pages. That's the size of the writing on the Kindle page, so it's not a lot. Now we're going to try Love Language by Jax Calder. Okay, so the first chapter of Love Language is from Ashton's perspective. He and the guy that he shares an office with at work, Dominic, are going to the staff Christmas in July staff function. I think it's set in New Zealand. That's the clue is there that Dominic knows New Zealand Sign Language, so I'm assuming it's New Zealand. Like the running joke is that Dominic, who is a senior programmer for the company that Ashton works for, is kind of grumpy, and all of the other people who work at the company are really wary of him and can't believe that Ashton has survived 3 years of working in the same office as him, which happened by accident when the space where Ashton was supposed to be working was flooded, and so everyone was reallocated to other spaces. And apparently there was a betting pool that he'd only last 2 weeks. It's been 3 years, and they're really close. And at the very end of it, at the very end of the first chapter, Ashton wakes up the next day, he's talking to his housemates, who all turn around and say, so you spent the entire night with this guy that you spend all of the time with, all of your day with, when you could have been spending it with the other people you work with. Are you sure you're not obsessed? And he starts to question everything. Yeah, it's only a novella length. I like the writing. I like the dynamic between them. Grumpy Sunshine is always fun. So now we are going to try The Amazing Alpha Tau Boyfriend Project. That is a really long name that I'm never going to remember without looking at it. All right, so the first chapter I think is from Archer's point of view. I'm trying to remember if I think his name might have been said once. Anyway, Archer is the point of view character. He is part of a fraternity. He and his fraternity brothers are at the wedding of someone who was a member of their fraternity. And it's a big ostentatious wedding, and all of the frat guys are under a bit of speculation by the other guests for things that may or may not be going wrong. Some of them are very drunk. Archer is trying not to be, and is trying to be on his best behavior. Most of them are pre-law, and so one comment he makes is, they like to have fun, they like to be a bit silly at times, but they don't want to do anything that is illegal at any point, because that's, not what they're about. So they're having a great old time, and Archer keeps running into this guy who is a relative on the bride's side of the family. A drink gets spilled on Archer's shirt, and by the end of the night, the guy goes, look, here's my number in case, you need to get the shirt cleaned or whatever. And that's kind of where the chapter ends. I don't know about this one. Like, it's fun. It's fun, but I don't know if I want to read about fraternities at the minute. So we shall see. Which takes me to the first chapter I'm going to be reading, which is The Invention of Wings, which I have to read on my computer. So the first chapter of The Invention of Wings is from Mitch's perspective. Mitch was a hopeful to win everything in figure skating until he had a really horrible accident while he was competing, and he came down on his ankle, and his ankle basically gave way, and that ended his career. His nickname was Wings because he was so good, and then they renamed him to Broken Wings, which is still a bit of a sore point for him, as you would imagine. Anyway, he has been getting calls from his hometown doctor who has concerns about his sister, and there is a content warning about a relative who has problems with hoarding, and that's what the call is about. But he doesn't really want to return home because everyone had pinned, hopes on him, and he failed, and that's something that 7 years later still weighs on him. The writing is really good. I'm intrigued. I have to think about whether I want to pay $10 for it or whether I can get it through... Actually, I haven't even seen if I can get it through Libby. May not be able to. Might as well do this while I'm on camera, right? No. So I'll have to think about whether or not I want to purchase this at some point, or maybe it goes back into KU. We'll see. So at this point in the video, I think I've made up my mind. Like, always Fraser and her Vampire Prince, I'm not going to continue reading. The others are all definite possibilities. I might be back later to either wrap up this vlog or to talk about some of these books. I don't know. Hi everyone. So it's like 24 hours later. I've actually read 2 of the books that I started in this vlog, which no one else is doing in their little collab, but I'm me. And this is a try chapter video. And in a try chapter video, I try and read at least one thing to, bring the numbers down. So I'm going to talk about those really quickly. And then I realized that because I'm firing on anywhere between 60 to 70% of my normal mental capacity on any given day at this point, I didn't really explain how I find books for my TBR at the start of this video. I mean, I started to, but I probably didn't explain it really well. So I'll come back to that at the end. So in the end, I decided to finish Honkers Under the Holly, which is by Amy Award. And it's a novella prequel set in the world of her contemporary romance series, which all feature weird and wacky pets. So in this one, I think I said that, you know, Sarah Jane meets Mac at like an Oktoberfest festival. He also is introduced to Sir Honks-a-Lot, the goose that she rescues from the catering company that was going to it. And she needs to find a home for it. And Mac is a sports agent and Sarah Jane is a plus size model, or trying to be a plus size model, and finding that a little bit difficult in LA. And when some advice that they're given for either her career or for one of his clients sort of converge, Mac comes up with the plan for Sarah Jane to share custody of Sir Honks-a-Lot with one of his clients, Tommy, who plays in the professional hockey, not professional hockey, oh my God, I've got hockey on the brain, in the professional football league. And so Sarah Jane and Tommy start doing all of these social media posts and things like that. They're getting some traction, and they also end up in this photo shoot together, which is unfortunate because just prior to this, Mac and Sarah Jane end up fake engaged in order to be able to house sit in this very expensive mansion for 6 weeks while they're both trying to figure out new living situations. But they're falling for one another. This photo shoot between Sarah Jane and Tommy goes viral because there's one scene where he was play acting, asking her to marry him. And so the entire world thinks that they're engaged. So of course, what could possibly go wrong when Sarah Jane and Mac are captured in a photo together and that is leaked to the public? I mean, who knows? This is a really short 4-hour audiobook, so I think it's about 147 pages long. It was really fun and sweet and just kind of adorable and silly at times. I mean, if you like animals in your books and you like silly setups, I mean, this will work for you. I also finished Love Language by Jax Calder, which is such an adorable queer novella length short story kind of thing. It's like 70 pages long. And this is that workplace romance, which is a grumpy sunshine story between Ashton and Dominic, who Dominic is a computer programmer who is perceived by all of his colleagues to be very grumpy and surly and unapproachable. And Ashton accidentally ended up sharing the same office with Dominic for 3.5 years. Dominic is not a person who likes to change habits. So despite the fact that they banter and have a relationship that other people would be questioning why they end up falling in love with one another, like they know how to poke at each other. Dominic doesn't like change, so he doesn't want the arrangement to change. And Ashton slowly comes to the realization that he has fallen for Dominic, but he doesn't know how Dominic feels about the whole thing until he sees a video of them at the party that's in the first chapter that I was talking about in the first clip for this video, where Dominic is signing to him. Now, Ashton doesn't know New Zealand Sign Language, so he doesn't know what Dominic said. Dominic told him what he said, but we all know that that was not what he probably said. And when he gets it translated, Ashton realizes that Dominic is in love with him. And so they end up confessing this to one another in a very sweet gesture. Like, it's just a super sweet little novella. Like, it's just so sweet. And it was totally what I needed this afternoon. So I was really glad that I read that one. And so that's 2 more books off the TBR. And I will definitely be going to see these authors when they're over here at Rare, just to say hello and say that I've enjoyed something that they've written. So when it comes to choosing TBRs, so everyone's TBR process is different. Like, how you choose what you read is going to be different. Like, you might be a total mood reader. You might like more structure in your reading. You might be like me. I fall kind of smack bang in the middle. I am mostly a mood reader, but I do like some structure. That's because I have a lot of books that I already own and I like to make progress in them. I don't think you have to. If you want to buy books and have them sit on your shelf for ages, that's totally fine. That's like whatever works for you. For me, there's a little bit of anxiety about having books that I've purchased and not read. And it's not a big thing. It's not something that's going to ruin my life, but I do like some structure to help me move through them because I've spent money on them. And as someone who on average per month so far this year has read about 51 books per month, which sounds insane, but a lot of those are children's picture books, junior fiction, middle fiction, etc. So that's included in there. I'm not going to filter them out for the sake of this video. But on average, I read about 51 books. Every month I do set myself a TBR. That TBR is usually somewhere between 10 and 15 books long, which when you consider how many books I read per month is actually not a huge portion of the total number of books that I read. So having like that little bit of structure where my TBRs, I'm very structured in how I pick them because I'm intentional with what I'm doing. So I might have challenges. So I'm participating in the Buzzwordathon. I've got to read along. We're reading the Firebird Chronicles together as a friendship group. I like to read the oldest books that are sitting on my TBR. So the oldest book on my KU checkout list. I've now included the oldest physical book on my TBR and also the oldest ebook. Sorry, not the oldest ebook. I can do that. I actually know the order of those. I could do the oldest ebook, but I do a random ebook pick from my Star Jar, and I pick something from my middle fiction and young adult collection. All of that just helps me read down those collections. Like I like to group things. Like read into that what you will. I like having collections of things. I like reorganizing my TBR into themes and collections, and it just helps me to read them down. So each month I do have that set bit that helps me to get to some of those older titles that maybe just get lost in the shuffle. But it is not so big a TBR that it doesn't allow me room to move in the month if something comes up and I really want to read it, or if I change my mind. Like I don't care, I can change my mind about things. I also DNF frequently now, and things that I purchased like 2 years ago or more, if I still own them, they may no longer appeal. I might try them and just go, you know what? I'm past this now, and I've got plenty of friends that I can pass these things on to. Like that, I've got a friend who'll take any book that I give her, and then she either passes it on to her daughter or donates it or passes it on to friends. Like we have that kind of, book relationship. So where do I find my book recommendations? I think earlier I said I do find them through BookTube. I watch a lot of BookTube. One, it's just really good for coming up with content ideas. Two, I like hearing what people are reading, hearing what's new. I follow people who just read backlist titles as well, so that's a really great way to find books. And I also watch a lot of people whose content and reading is different to mine. Now, that's not because I'm definitely going to pick up books that they're recommending or that they're reading, but it does give me an idea of what's out there and what's outside my comfort zone, because I do dip in and out of things all the time. Like you guys have seen that I don't just read only one thing. Like I'll get into moments where I do just read one thing, but I read kind of all over the place. Similarly, I do follow a lot of people on Instagram. They tend to get lost now in random toddler content because I keep looking up things for my sister and my niece, but I do get bookish content across a couple of different accounts that I have. And they might be bookstagrammers who are reading popular books or who read similarly to me. I follow a lot of authors, so I see when their new books are coming out. So that's a really great way for me to keep on track of, my favorite authors and what they're releasing. And also I follow quite a few bookstores here in Melbourne because they also post really interesting content, and they often post books that I've never heard of. So again, pushing me outside my comfort zone, piquing my interest, getting me to think about what it is that I'm reading. I get recommendations from my friends. We're constantly talking about books and recommending things or not recommending things, or, talking about controversies or things like that. So we're constantly talking about things that are relevant to our reading tastes. And often that is a really great place to start, because usually if a couple of us really like something, it means the majority of us are going to enjoy it. And we also know each other's tastes so well that we can say, okay, well, hey, Steph, I think you're going to like this, or Steph, don't read this because it's not going to be for you. Like we know each other well enough now to be able to give those kind of recommendations. The other place I get recommendations from are author email newsletters. I'm subscribed to a bunch of stuff just for various reasons, and I go through periodically and unsubscribe from them. But there are a few authors that I follow and I read their newsletters anytime they come out, because they're always talking about what they're reading. And I always find that interesting. Even if I don't get something from it, occasionally a book will come up. Sometimes there's a freebie and I really got to stop just, collecting books that are free. But, if it's a free ebook, it's sitting on a digital device. Yes, I'm trying to read those down, but also it's not like it's taking up space on my shelf or in my apartment. So if it piques my interest, there's a possibility that I'll get a book from there. And then I suppose the last little bit is, how do I put together TBRs? Well, I talked about my monthly TBRs, the ones that I set in videos, which I have a whole playlist of those and how I've set them over the last couple of years. That's a structure that I have at the start of every month, but then also I might get content ideas and I might go, okay, well, I'll use my new sort of video theme idea that I've been starting recently, the last 5 books, which are going to be books that are all similar in theme. The first one I did was hockey romances featuring goalies. So there was some common theme that tied them together. I might find myself, because I do this often, I talked about it in that video, I often find myself reading books with similar themes around the same time. And so why not, if I've got 3 or 4 of those, I might go and do a bit of research and find a 5th book that fits into that category if I don't already have one in mind, and then just put together a little TBR like that. I don't mind doing that, because if I'm on a roll, I'm on a roll. I do a lot of these try chapter videos, and that's another way of, one, trying to read down my TBR, but also putting together a random TBR to see what I'm interested in reading. And what you guys haven't seen yet, so this is a bit of a sneak peek if you've lasted this long in the video, is that I have taken all of the books that I have tried the first chapter of, that I have kept but haven't read and haven't DNF'd, and put them into a list, which I can also then use as content, as a TBR moving forward of, I've tried these books, I wanted to read them, I didn't want to get rid of them, so maybe I need to get back to them at some point. And I think the most important thing as a reader is just pay attention to what you're currently interested in, and read what you're interested in. Like, I don't know why that seems to be a really difficult thing for a lot of people, because if you are, particularly if you're filming content, if you're putting together a TBR and in your video or post or whatever you go, I don't really feel like reading this one, but it's come up for whatever reason. I don't understand that mentality. Do I do that occasionally? Of course I do. I mean, sometimes I get sent books for review, and my personal thing is to always try to read the books that I'm sent for review. Occasionally they're not things that I've requested, so they're not necessarily in my wheelhouse, and I want to make an effort, I suppose. And it doesn't mean I have to finish them. It doesn't mean anything like that. But I don't understand why people stack their TBRs with books that they're not feeling like reading, because some arbitrary way of choosing a TBR has decided that for them. The only time I'll do that is if it's a try chapter video or something like that, and I'm like, the purpose of it is to figure out whether I actually do want to read it or not. So I don't know if that makes sense. As I said, firing on 60 to 70% of brain capacity. So articulation is not my strong suit at the moment. That's how I select my TBR. I'm very random. Like, sometimes I'm super structured, sometimes I'm completely off the rails and just whatever, but it works for me. And I think the most important thing is finding what works for you, and what works for you doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for the next person. So some people love playing complicated TBR games. Some people love competition readathons and whatever. We've talked about this before. I like a really simple readathon. I love a bingo board or a list of prompts. Like, that's good for me. I don't mind the occasional, TBR game, but I can't play it month in, month out. If I do that, I find myself breaking the rules of the TBR game. So that's not the purpose of it. Whatever works for you has to work for you. And if your TBR doesn't make you feel good, scrap it. Like, that's the only advice I can give anyone, is just scrap it and go for something that you want. Okay, admittedly, I will say that there are some people who are indecisive, and there are times when I'm indecisive, and I know that that is a really paralyzing thing when maybe you have too much choice, or you can't sort out your parameters. But I also don't think forcing yourself to read something that you really don't want to read helps that situation either. My advice is consider what it is that you like to do. What brings you the most joy when you're reading? What sources do you have for finding inspiration? Do you have people who just give you really good recommendations all the time, and so you know that if you get stuck you can go to them? Like, whatever works for you, lean into it and enjoy it, because it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience. I don't know what this video has devolved into. I will leave a list of all the books that I talked about in this video down below, and I will also leave a list of all of the channels of all of my friends who are participating in this collab as well. So if you want to follow them, feel free to. They will definitely have some really interesting content. We've been talking about it and how everyone's choosing TBRs and things like that, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of work on this little project together and also understand each other's process. In the comments, I would love to know, how do you choose your TBR? What's like one of your go-to strategies? Feel free to let everyone know down below. Otherwise, feel free to leave a book stack emoji to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.